The night smelled of rain and expensive cologne. I brushed droplets from my secondhand jacket as I hurried through the back entrance of Bellissimo, my waterlogged shoes squeaking against the polished marble floor. The restaurant hummed with the gentle clinking of crystal glasses and the murmur of wealthy patrons who wouldn't look twice at someone like me. "You're late again, Sophia." Marco, the floor manager, didn't bother hiding his disapproval as he thrust a crisp black apron into my hands. "Third time this week. I'm sorry. The bus broke down and—" "Save it," he cut me off with a wave of his manicured hand. "Table 7 needs fresh bread, and 12 is waiting for their check. And for God's sake, do something with your hair." I nodded, quickly tucking stray brown strands behind my ears, trying to smooth the frizz the rain had left. Bellissimo wasn't just any upscale Italian restaurant in Chicago. It was the place where power deals happened, where politicians and businessmen gathered over $200 bottles of wine. And I was just the invisible person refilling their water glasses, but the job paid well above minimum wage. And with Lily's medical bills piling up, I couldn't afford to lose it. My 4-year-old daughter's asthma treatments weren't going to pay for themselves, especially now that her father had disappeared with most of our savings. 6 months gone. No trace of him. Only the crushing debt he'd left behind. I straightened my uniform and entered the dining room, immediately slipping into the practiced rhythm of service. Smile, pour, nod, disappear. The wealthy didn't want to acknowledge the help. They wanted us to materialize when needed, and evaporate when not. That's when I first noticed him. He sat alone at table 19, partially obscured by a large decorative column. Unlike our usual patrons who demanded attention with their loud voices and expansive gestures, this man seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Dark hair peppered with silver at the temples, clean-shaven face with angles that could cut glass. He wore a charcoal suit that probably cost more than my yearly rent. But there was something different about him. While other wealthy men shouted their importance, his power was quiet, contained, like a predator that doesn't need to announce its presence. What struck me most was how he watched everything. Not in the way customers usually surveyed the room, looking for friends or better tables, but with the methodical assessment of someone cataloging every exit, every face, every potential threat. "New guy at 19, whispered Gabriella, another waitress as we passed each other. "He's all yours." "I'm drowning with the party of 8, thanks," I muttered, grabbing a menu and water pitcher. As I approached his table, I noticed something else unusual. Most of our high-profile guests came with entourages. Assistants, business partners, security. This man was alone, yet didn't seem lonely. It was as if solitude was his natural state. "Good evening, sir. Welcome to Bellissimo." My rehearsed greeting died in my throat as his eyes met mine, dark, penetrating, and somehow familiar. A shiver traveled down my spine, though I couldn't understand why. "Water?" I managed, my voice sounding smaller than intended. He nodded almost imperceptibly, and I poured with hands I forced to remain steady. A dark car pulled up outside the rain-streaked windows, and his eyes flicked to it momentarily, then back to me with such intensity that I nearly overfilled the glass. "I'll give you a moment with the menu," I said, retreating quickly, unsure why my heart was hammering against my ribs. Throughout my shift, I found myself returning to table 19 more frequently than necessary. Each time he ordered something small, an appetizer, a glass of wine, extending his stay. Each time I felt his gaze following me as I moved between tables. Not leering or inappropriate like some customers, but observant, as if I were a puzzle he was trying to solve. Near midnight, as the restaurant emptied and I began clearing his table, he finally spoke. "You look tired." His voice was deep, accented with traces of Italian that the expensive education couldn't completely erase. I froze, unused to being seen, truly seen by anyone in this place. "I'm fine, sir." "You have another job?" It wasn't really a question. I shifted uncomfortably. "I have a daughter to support." Something flickered across his face. Surprise, perhaps, or interest. "How old?" The question was personal, crossing the boundary between server and customer. Yet I found myself answering. 4. He nodded, as if confirming a suspicion, then placed his napkin on the table and stood. He was taller than I'd realized, his presence filling the space between us. From his pocket, he withdrew a leather wallet, removed several $100 bills, and placed them under his water glass. "For your daughter," he said simply. Pride flared inside me. "I don't accept charity, sir." His mouth quirked in what might have been amusement. "It's not charity. It's a tip for excellent service." "That's more than I make in a week. Then perhaps you're undervalued." He stepped closer, and I caught the scent of his cologne, something expensive but subtle, like cedar and amber. "What's your name?" "Sophia," I answered, though every instinct told me to lie. He studied me for a long moment, then reached into his jacket and produced a business card, plain white with only a phone number embossed in black. "If you ever need anything, call this number." I didn't take it. "I don't even know who you are." For the first time, he smiled. A small, dangerous thing that didn't quite reach his eyes. "No, you don't." He set the card on the table beside the money. "But I know who you are, Sophia Pierce. I know about your daughter Lily's medical condition. I know your ex-husband Thomas disappeared with $70,000 of joint savings and credit card debt. I know you work here 5 nights a week and at the pharmacy on Westlake during days." Ice flooded my veins. "How could you possibly take the money?" he interrupted softly. "And the card. Chicago winters are cold, and children's medicine is expensive." Before I could respond, the front door opened, admitting a gust of cold air and a large man in a dark suit who nodded respectfully toward my customer. The silent communication between them was clear. It was time to leave. As he moved past me, he paused, leaning slightly closer. "I'll be seeing you again, Sophia." It wasn't until he disappeared into the rainy night, sliding into the back of a sleek black car with tinted windows, that I realized I was shaking. I stared at the business card, plain and threatening in its simplicity. Who was he? How did he know so much about me? Marco appeared beside me, his face unusually pale. "Do you have any idea who that was?" I shook my head. "Alessio Russo." He whispered the name like it might summon a demon. "He owns this restaurant, and half the city." The name hit me like a physical blow. Everyone in Chicago knew of the Russo family. Old money, old power, old rumors of connections that reached far beyond legitimate business. The kind of people you read about but never encountered. The kind who could make problems and people disappear. "That's impossible," I stammered. "He can't be. The owner is some elderly Italian man who lives in Milan. I've seen his picture in the office." Marco laughed, a sharp, nervous sound. "That's his uncle," the face they put forward. "Alessio runs everything now, has for years. He never comes here himself, never." "Then why tonight?" Marco's eyes dropped to the card and money still on the table. "I don't know, but whatever you did to get his attention, God help you." I slipped the card into my pocket, my mind racing. Why would someone like Alessio Russo take interest in a single mother struggling to make ends meet? What could he possibly want from me? As I finished my shift, gathering my thin jacket against the promise of more rain, my phone buzzed with a text from Mrs. Abernathy, my elderly neighbor who watched Lily while I worked nights. "Lily's having trouble breathing again. Used the inhaler, but it's not helping much. Maybe time for ER?" Panic gripped me. Another emergency room visit would be another $1,000 I didn't have. The memory of Alessio's money, still in my apron pocket, suddenly felt less like an insult and more like salvation. The following night, I arrived early for my shift, my thoughts still tangled around the mysterious man and his inexplicable interest in me. Lily had stabilized without a hospital visit, but the close call had left me shaken and even more aware of my financial precarity. "You've been moved to private dining room 3 tonight," Marco informed me as I clocked in, avoiding my eyes. "What? Why?" "I always work the main floor. Owner's instructions." He busied himself with the reservation book. "Just you, serving 1 table." My stomach dropped. "Is it?" "Don't ask questions you don't want answers to, Sophia." Marco looked up finally, his expression uncharacteristically kind. "Just be professional and forget whatever happened last night." Men like him. They're dangerous to know. Private Dining Room 3 was Bellissimo's most exclusive space, reserved for celebrities and politicians who required discretion. As I entered to prepare the table, I found a garment bag hanging on a rack in the corner. my name written on a card attached to it. Inside was a black dress, simple but elegant, with matching shoes that looked exactly my size. No note, no explanation. Just the clear expectation that I would wear it. I should have walked out. Should have quit on the spot. But Lily's wheezing breaths from the night before echoed in my memory, and I thought of the growing pile of overdue notices on my kitchen counter. So I changed, the silk of the dress cool against my skin, and wondered what price I might ultimately pay for this moment of weakness. At precisely 8 o'clock, the door opened, and Alessio Russo entered, this time flanked by 2 men whose bulky jackets couldn't quite disguise the weapons they undoubtedly carried. They swept the room with practiced efficiency before stationing themselves outside, closing the door behind them. Alessio stood watching me, his expression unreadable. "The dress suits you." "I prefer my uniform," I replied, struggling to keep my voice even. "And yet you changed. You didn't leave me much choice." He moved to the table, pulling out a chair not for himself, but gesturing for me to sit. "Everyone has choices, Sophia. You've made yours. Now I'm making mine." "Which is what, exactly?" His dark eyes held mine. "To offer you a proposition." I remained standing. "I'm supposed to be serving you dinner, not negotiating, whatever this is. Please sit." It wasn't a request, despite the please. "What I'm about to tell you requires your full attention." Against my better judgment, I sat, and he took the seat across from me, unbuttoning his jacket with a fluid motion that spoke of ingrained elegance. "3 years ago," he began, "a man named Thomas Pierce approached one of my businesses seeking investment capital for a pharmaceutical startup. He had credentials, recommendations, and a compelling proposal. I gave him access to certain resources." My breath caught. "Thomas, my ex-husband?" Alessio nodded once. 6 months ago, he disappeared. Not just from your life, but from mine. With considerably more than the 70,000 he took from you. The implications crashed over me like a wave. "You think I had something to do with that?" "Initially, that was a possibility we investigated." His tone was matter-of-fact, as if discussing the weather rather than my potential complicity in theft. "But you're clearly struggling financially, working 2 jobs, living in an apartment with faulty heating, and delaying medical care for your child. Not the profile of someone with access to several $1,000,000. I gripped the edge of the table. "Million? Thomas stole millions from you? From certain interests I protect, yes." Alessio leaned forward slightly. "Which brings me to why you're here. Thomas had a particular weakness. He talked too much when he felt comfortable, especially to his wife. Ex-wife," I corrected automatically, still reeling. "And he never mentioned you or any deal, perhaps not by name. But he might have mentioned contacts, meeting locations, security measures, details that seemed inconsequential at the time." I shook my head. "I don't know anything that could help you find him." "Perhaps not consciously." His eyes never left mine. "But memory is a curious thing, Sophia. Sometimes we know more than we realize." A chill ran through me. "So what? You want to interrogate me? Threaten me until I remember something useful?" For the first time, genuine surprise flickered across his face. "Is that what you think of me? I don't know what to think of you. I don't know you at all. Yet I know you." There was an odd note in his voice, almost gentle. "I know you graduated with honors in biochemistry before marrying Thomas. I know you had plans for medical school before your daughter's health complications redirected your priorities. I know you haven't dated since Thomas left. That you spend Sundays in the park with Lily when weather permits. That you keep a journal where you write poetry you never show anyone." Each revelation felt like a violation. "Why? Why would someone like you investigate someone like me so thoroughly?" He was silent for a moment, studying me with an intensity that made my skin prickle. "Because you're the key to finding Thomas. And what he stole." "I told you, I don't know." 3 words, Sophia. His voice dropped lower. "Last night, as you served my water, you said 3 words under your breath. Words you shouldn't have known." I frowned, trying to recall. "I don't understand." "Shadows never sleep. Gee." He quoted the phrase with perfect recall, a code phrase known only to a handful of people in my organization. Yet somehow you knew it. My confusion must have shown on my face, because he leaned back slightly, reassessing. You truly don't remember saying it? I shook my head, genuinely bewildered. I wouldn't even know what that means. Something shifted in his expression. Calculation giving way to a new theory forming behind those dark eyes. Interesting. Perhaps Thomas was more clever than I gave him credit for. A knock at the door interrupted us, and one of his men entered, whispering something urgent in Alessio's ear. His expression hardened, and he stood abruptly. "We're not finished, you and I," he said, buttoning his jacket. "But circumstances require that we continue this conversation elsewhere. My men will escort you home." "I have a shift to finish," I protested weakly. The smile he gave me then was cold and final. "No, Sophia. You don't work here anymore. From now on, you work for me." And with those words, my life as I knew it ended, and something far more dangerous began. "I can't just leave," I protested, rising from my seat as Alessio moved toward the door. "I have responsibilities, my daughter." He turned, fixing me with that penetrating stare. "Your daughter is already being taken care of." Ice filled my veins. "What does that mean? What have you done to Lily?" For the first time, I saw something like genuine emotion cross his face, surprise. Then what might have been offense. "I would never harm a child, Sophia. My men simply arranged for Mrs. Abernathy to receive a very generous compensation package for continuing her childcare services indefinitely. Your daughter is safe at home, exactly where she should be." Relief warred with indignation. "You can't just rearrange my life without my permission." "I already have." He gestured to one of his men, who produced a thick envelope and placed it on the table. "Inside, you'll find enough money to cover Lily's medical expenses for the next year, including the specialized treatment at Northwestern Memorial that her doctor recommended but your insurance denied." My mouth went dry. "How do you know about that?" "I know everything about you, Sophia. It's how I survive." He checked his watch, a subtle, impossibly expensive timepiece that gleamed dully under the restaurant lights. "You have a choice to make, and quickly. You can come with me willingly and help recover what Thomas stole, or you can refuse. But understand that refusing doesn't mean returning to your previous life. That option no longer exists." The threat lay beneath his words. Unspoken, but clear. I thought of Lily, of the wheezing that woke her at night, of the treatments we couldn't afford. I thought of the mounting bills and the exhaustion that had become my constant companion. "What exactly do you want from me?" I asked, my voice steadier than I felt. "Your memories? Your insights into Thomas? And those 3 words you spoke, they suggest you know more than you realize. I intend to discover what that is. And when this is over, when you find Thomas or whatever he took..." Something flickered in his dark eyes. Calculation, perhaps, or something I couldn't name. "Then you'll be compensated generously for your cooperation and free to live whatever life you choose, with considerably more comfort than your current circumstances." I didn't believe him. Men like Alessio Russo didn't let loose ends dangle, but I also didn't see any other option that kept Lily safe and cared for. "I need to see my daughter first," I said, trying to establish some small measure of control. He studied me for a long moment, then nodded once. "A brief visit. My men will accompany you." 20 minutes later, I found myself in the back of a sleek black SUV with tinted windows, sandwiched between 2 silent men in suits who might as well have had "dangerous" stamped on their foreheads. The city lights blurred past as we wound through Chicago's nighttime traffic, eventually pulling up to my shabby apartment building. 10 minutes, said the larger of the 2 men, the first words either had spoken. My apartment was on the 3rd floor of a building with an eternally broken elevator. As I climbed the familiar stairs, the men following at a respectful distance, I tried to process how completely my life had changed in the span of hours. Yesterday, I was an anonymous waitress struggling to make ends meet. Today, I was... what? A prisoner? An asset? Something else entirely? Mrs. Abernathy opened my apartment door before I could use my key, her weathered face creasing with relief. "Oh, Sophia, Your colleague explained you'd be working late. Such a nice young man, and so generous with the babysitting fee." I forced a smile, glancing past her to where Lily lay asleep on our pull-out sofa, her dark curls splayed across the pillow, one small hand clutching her favorite stuffed rabbit. The steady rise and fall of her chest was the most beautiful sight in the world. "Is she okay?" I asked quietly. "Right as rain tonight," Mrs. Abernathy assured me. "No wheezing at all. And the nicest delivery came. One of those special air purifiers the doctor mentioned. Said it was a company benefit you'd earned." I swallowed hard, moving to kneel beside my sleeping daughter. Gently, I brushed a curl from her forehead. Lily stirred slightly, her eyes fluttering open. "Mommy?" she murmured sleepily. "I'm here, sweetheart." I kissed her forehead, breathing in the baby shampoo smell of her hair. "Mommy has to work a special job for a few days, but Mrs. Abernathy will stay with you, okay? Will you read me a story tomorrow?" The innocent question nearly broke me. "Not tomorrow, honey, but very soon. And when I come back, we'll have so many stories to read together." She nodded, already drifting back to sleep, secure in the absolute faith children have that their parents will always return. I tucked the blanket around her, then stood and quickly gathered some essentials from our cramped bedroom: clothes, toiletries, the locket with a picture of Lily inside that I always kept close. As I prepared to leave, one of Alessio's men stepped forward, discreetly passing Mrs. Abernathy an envelope. "Mr. Russo wanted to ensure you had everything needed for the child's comfort," he said smoothly. "The second bedroom's heating issue has been scheduled for repair tomorrow morning. Mrs." Abernathy beamed. "Such a thoughtful employer you have, dear. Don't worry about a thing here." Outside, the night air had turned colder, and I hugged my jacket tighter around me as I slid back into the waiting SUV. "Where are we going?" I asked once we were moving again. "Somewhere safe," was the only response I received. Safe turned out to be a penthouse apartment in one of Chicago's most exclusive high-rises, with floor-to-ceiling windows offering a dizzying view of the city lights and Lake Michigan beyond. The space was minimalist but luxurious. All clean lines, neutral tones, and furniture that looked both beautiful and uncomfortable. "Mr. Russo will join you shortly," said the man who had escorted me up in a private elevator. "Make yourself comfortable. The kitchen is stocked, and there are clothes in the bedroom that should fit you." Before I could ask any of the dozens of questions crowding my mind, he was gone, the soft click of the door lock confirming what I already suspected. I was a prisoner, albeit in a gilded cage. I explored the apartment cautiously. The kitchen was indeed stocked with gourmet foods and an impressive wine collection. The bedroom contained a closet full of women's clothing in exactly my size, everything from casual wear to evening gowns, all with designer labels I'd only seen in magazines. The attached bathroom featured a shower with more settings than my car, and products that probably cost more than a week's salary at the restaurant. It was all so calculated, so prepared, that a new chill ran through me. How long had Alessio Russo been planning this? Had he been watching me for weeks, months? I changed out of the black dress into simple jeans and a sweater from the closet, trying to reclaim some sense of normalcy. Then I curled up in a chair by the window, watching the city below, feeling as distant from those twinkling lights, as if I were on another planet. I must have dozed off because I startled awake at the sound of the door opening. Alessio entered alone, his suit exchanged for dark jeans and a charcoal cashmere sweater that somehow made him look even more dangerous in its casual elegance. "I trust the accommodations are satisfactory," he said, moving to a cabinet where he poured 2 glasses of amber liquid. "Why all this?" I gestured at the luxury surrounding us. "If you wanted information about Thomas, you could have just questioned me." He approached, offering me one of the glasses. "Information extracted under pressure is notoriously unreliable. I prefer comfort and clarity." I accepted the drink, but didn't taste it. "And the clothing? The prepared apartment? How long have you been planning to kidnap me?" "This isn't a kidnapping, Sophia. It's a job offer." He took the seat opposite me, his movements fluid and controlled. "As for the preparations, let's call it contingency planning. I've been looking for Thomas for 6 months. You became a person of interest the moment we confirmed his disappearance. 6 months, I echoed. The same time he left me. Not coincidental. The day he disappeared from your life was the same day he vanished with our investment. Alessio sipped his drink, studying me over the rim of his glass. I believe he set certain safeguards in place before his departure, including perhaps using you as an unwitting carrier of information. I frowned. The 3 words, shadows never sleep. I still have no idea what that means or why I would have said it. It's a verification phrase used in sensitive communications among my inner circle, a passphrase that, when spoken, confirms the speaker is authorized to access certain information or locations. His dark eyes never left mine. The fact that you uttered it, apparently unconsciously, suggests Thomas embedded it somehow, a form of information hiding known as steganography. My biochemistry background hadn't prepared me for discussions of information security in criminal enterprises. That sounds like spy novel nonsense. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. Reality is often more fantastic than fiction, Sophia, especially in my world. And what world is that, exactly? I challenged, finding courage in exhaustion and confusion. Are you going to finally admit what everyone knows? That you're not just a businessman? His expression hardened slightly. What I am is a man of specific talents and responsibilities. My family has protected its interests in this city for generations. Sometimes that requires methods outside conventional business practices. It was as close to a confession as I was likely to get. So now what? I asked. You keep me locked up here until I magically remember something useful about a man who lied to me for our entire relationship? Not locked up. Protected. He set his glass down, leaning forward slightly. Thomas stole from dangerous people, Sophia. People who don't share my patience or restraint. If they discover your connection to him, your potential knowledge, they won't ask questions politely over drinks. A chill ran through me at the matter-of-fact way he described the threat. And Lily? Is she in danger too? Something flickered in his eyes, a softening I wouldn't have expected. Your daughter is under my protection now. No harm will come to her. Why would you care about protecting my child? For the first time, he seemed to choose his words carefully. Children should never suffer for their parents' mistakes. It's a principle I hold. There was a story there, but before I could pursue it, he stood, buttoning his suit jacket in a fluid motion. Tomorrow, we begin the process of recovering your memories about Thomas, where he might have gone, what he might have hidden, and most importantly, why you spoke those 3 words. Tonight, rest. You're safe here. Am I? I challenged. Safe from what, exactly? You? Your enemies? My own past, apparently? He paused at the door, looking back at me with an expression I couldn't decipher. All of the above, Sophia. All of the above. After he left, I explored the apartment more thoroughly, looking for some way to contact the outside world. There was no phone. The television worked but had no cable or antenna connection, only streaming services. The sleek laptop on the desk opened to a browser that seemed deliberately limited to certain websites. No email, no social media, nothing that could be used to communicate. Even the windows, for all their spectacular views, didn't open more than a few inches. Not that I'd have considered a leap from 30 stories up. I was effectively isolated, dependent entirely on Alessio Russo's word that my daughter was safe and cared for. The realization brought a wave of helpless anger that eventually dissolved into exhausted tears. I woke the next morning to sunlight streaming through the enormous windows and the smell of coffee. For a disorienting moment, I thought I was home, that Lily would come bouncing in at any second demanding breakfast and stories. Reality crashed back as I registered the unfamiliar luxury around me. I'd fallen asleep in the chair by the window, and someone had draped a soft blanket over me without waking me. A disturbing thought. Following the coffee aroma to the kitchen, I found a full breakfast laid out. Fresh pastries, fruit, yogurt, and a folded note with my name written in an elegant, decisive hand. Sophia, business requires my attention until afternoon. Help yourself to anything in the apartment. At 1 p.m., Antonio will escort you to our first session with Dr. Mercer, who specializes in memory recovery techniques. Wear something comfortable. The casual domesticity of the note, as if this were some consensual arrangement rather than coercion, made my blood boil. Yet the coffee was perfectly prepared, and hunger eventually overcame principle. As promised, at precisely 1 p.m., a knock came at the door. The man called Antonio, one of the silent suits from the previous night, escorted me down to the private garage where a different black SUV waited. "Where are we going?" I asked as we pulled into traffic. "Russo Medical Research Facility," Antonio answered, his first full sentence to me. "Outskirts of the city." The drive took nearly an hour, moving from Chicago's dense urban landscape to more industrial areas and finally to a campus-like setting surrounded by trees and high fencing. The building itself looked sleek and modern, with reflective glass and clean architectural lines. Nothing about it screamed mob-owned facility, but the armed security at the gate told a different story. Alessio was waiting in a spacious office overlooking a central courtyard. He wore a different suit today, navy blue, immaculately tailored, and was engaged in intense conversation with an older man in a lab coat when Antonio ushered me in. "Ah, Sophia." Alessio dismissed whoever he'd been speaking with and turned his full attention to me. "I trust you slept well?" "As well as any prisoner might," I replied coolly. His mouth tightened slightly. "You're not a prisoner. You're a guest whose movements are temporarily restricted for your own safety. A gilded cage is still a cage, Mr. Russo." "Alessio," he corrected, gesturing to a seating area where a slender woman with silver-streaked dark hair waited. "And this is Dr. Eleanor Mercer, a specialist in cognitive retrieval and memory science." "Doctor." Mercer smiled warmly, extending her hand. "It's a pleasure to meet you, Sophia. I understand you've had quite a disruptive few days." Her sympathetic tone almost broke through my defenses. Almost. That's one way to describe being forcibly removed from my life and separated from my daughter. If the doctor was fazed by my hostility, she didn't show it. "I understand your frustration. Perhaps we can work quickly and effectively so you can return to your normal routine as soon as possible." "That's entirely my intention," Alessio interjected smoothly. "The sooner we recover the information Thomas hid, the sooner you can return to Lily, with considerably improved circumstances." I sank into the indicated chair, suddenly exhausted by the pretense of normalcy. "Fine, let's get this over with. What does memory recovery actually mean? Are you going to hypnotize me, drug me?" Dr. Mercer's professional demeanor didn't waver. Nothing so dramatic or invasive. "We'll use a combination of cognitive interviewing techniques, association exercises, and carefully guided recollection. No drugs, no hypnosis, just structured conversation aimed at accessing memories you may not realize you have." "And if I don't have any useful memories? If Thomas never told me anything important?" Alessio and the doctor exchanged a glance I couldn't interpret. "We'll cross that bridge if necessary," Alessio said finally. "But those 3 words you spoke suggest otherwise. Thomas was clever, but not infallible. He left breadcrumbs somewhere, and I believe they lead through you." Dr. Mercer opened a sleek leather portfolio. "Let's start simply, Sophia. Tell me about the day Thomas left." And so began the strangest interview of my life. For hours, Dr. Mercer led me through detailed recollections of my final days with Thomas. What he said, what he did, how he behaved. Had he been nervous? Did he give any gifts? Take any unusual trips? Make strange phone calls? The questions were exhaustive, and Alessio sat silently throughout, watching me with those dark, unreadable eyes. By evening, I was mentally drained but no closer to revealing anything useful. If Thomas had hidden information with me, he'd done it extremely well. "That's enough for today," Dr. Mercer said finally, closing her notebook. "You've been very cooperative, Sophia. We'll try again tomorrow with a different approach." As Antonio escorted me back to the SUV, I caught a glimpse of Alessio and the doctor in intense conversation. Their expressions grave. Whatever they were looking for, they hadn't found it yet, and I didn't know whether to be relieved or terrified by that fact. The city was transformed by night as we drove back, skyscrapers glittering like stars brought down to earth. I pressed my forehead against the cool glass of the window, wondering what Lily was doing, if she missed me, if she was truly safe as Alessio had promised. Back at the penthouse, I was surprised to find Alessio already waiting, though we'd left the facility together. He must have taken a helicopter or had an impossible number of identical black SUVs at his disposal. He'd changed again, into more casual attire, dark trousers and a light sweater that softened his dangerous edges. He was standing by the window, silhouetted against the city lights, a glass of wine in his hand. "You must be hungry," he said without turning. "I've arranged dinner." The dining table was indeed set for two, with covered dishes and candles creating an atmosphere that felt disturbingly like a date rather than a captor-captive meal. "I'm not hungry," I lied, though my stomach betrayed me with an audible growl. Now he did turn, a hint of amusement touching his lips. "Pride is an admirable quality, Sophia, but entirely impractical in your situation. Eat, regain your strength. Tomorrow will be another long day." I remained standing by the door. "I want to talk to Lily, to hear her voice and know she's really okay." His expression softened fractionally. "That can be arranged." He withdrew a phone, not the sleek smartphone I'd expect, but an older model, likely untraceable, and dialed a number. After a brief exchange in rapid Italian, he held it out to me. With trembling hands, I took it, pressing it to my ear, just as Lily's sweet voice came through. "Mommy? Are you coming home soon?" Tears sprang to my eyes. "Not just yet, sweetheart. Mommy's special job is taking a little longer. Are you being good for Mrs. Abernathy?" "Uh-huh. And guess what? My breathing is all better, and a nice doctor came to see me today with a new medicine that doesn't taste yucky." My eyes shot to Alessio, who was watching me intently. "A doctor? Dr. Martinez, from the Special Children's Hospital. She said you asked her to come, and now I have a new inhaler that's shaped like a dinosaur." Dr. Martinez was indeed the specialist I'd tried unsuccessfully to get an appointment with for months. How had Alessio arranged it so quickly? And why? "That's wonderful, baby. I'm so glad you're feeling better." We talked for a few more precious minutes before Lily got distracted by something Mrs. Abernathy was showing her. After goodbyes and promises to call again soon, I handed the phone back to Alessio, my emotions a tangle of gratitude and suspicion. "Why?" I asked simply. He pocketed the phone. "Why what?" "Why arrange specialist care for Lily? It doesn't help you get information from me." He moved to the table, uncovering dishes that released enticing aromas. "Consider it an investment in our working relationship. Your cooperation will be more genuine if you're not distracted by worry for your child." It was a calculated answer, pragmatic and cold, yet something in his expression made me wonder if there was more to it. "Now, please." He gestured to the chair opposite his. "Join me for dinner. We have much to discuss about tomorrow's session." Reluctantly, I sat, the memory of Lily's happy voice echoing in my ears, a reminder of exactly what I stood to lose if I didn't play along with whatever game Alessio Russo was orchestrating. Dinner with Alessio was a surreal experience. The food, an exquisite Italian spread that would have cost a week's salary at Bellissimo, tasted like ashes in my mouth despite its obvious quality. We ate in silence for several minutes before he finally spoke. "You have questions," he stated, not looking up from his plate. "Ask them." I set down my fork. "Why me?" "If Thomas stole from you, there must be other ways to track him down. Ways that don't involve kidnapping an innocent waitress." His dark eyes met mine. "You're hardly innocent in this, Sophia. You were married to him for 5 years. You shared his home, his bed, his life. And clearly knew nothing about him," I countered. "The man I thought I married was a pharmaceutical researcher with student loans and modest ambitions. Not someone who steals millions from whatever you are." A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "And yet, you spoke those 3 words. Shadows never sleep. That makes you either complicit or useful. I'm giving you the benefit of assuming the latter. These memory recovery sessions," I said, changing tactics. "How long do they continue if I don't magically produce the information you want?" Alessio sipped his wine, considering. "That depends entirely on you. Dr. Mercer believes Thomas may have used a technique called subliminal encoding. essentially hiding information in your subconscious through repeated exposure to certain stimuli. If that's the case, it may take time to surface, and if it never does, his expression hardened, it will. Thomas was many things, but he wasn't suicidal. He would have created a fail-safe, a way to recover what he took if circumstances required it. You are that fail-safe, whether you realize it or not. I pushed my plate away, appetite gone. You keep saying Thomas stole millions. What exactly did he take? Money? Information? Drugs? For the first time, Alessio seemed genuinely hesitant, weighing how much to reveal. Research, he finally said. Experimental pharmaceutical formulations with significant market potential. You mean illegal drugs? I mean life-saving medications being developed outside the crippling bureaucracy of traditional approval channels. His voice took on an edge I hadn't heard before. Treatments that could help people like your daughter, who can't wait years for FDA validation while insurance companies deny coverage. The mention of Lily sent a chill through me. Don't bring my daughter into this. She's already in this, Sophia. Thomas ensured that when he chose you as his unwitting courier, he set down his wine glass with deliberate care. But unlike Thomas, I'm ensuring she benefits rather than suffers for her father's choices. The specialist appointment, the new medications, the air purifier, all calculated moves in whatever game Alessio was playing, yet I couldn't deny they had genuinely improved Lily's condition. I want to see her, I said abruptly. Not just talk on the phone, actually see her, hold her. Alessio studied me for a long moment. That can be arranged. A brief, supervised visit, after tomorrow's session shows measurable progress. It was manipulation, pure and simple, but I had no leverage to demand better terms. Fine. That night, alone in the luxurious bedroom that felt nothing like home, I dreamed of Thomas. Not the Thomas who'd abandoned me and stolen our savings, but the man I'd fallen in love with years earlier. Brilliant, charming, slightly awkward in social situations, but passionate about his research. In the dream, he was whispering something to me as I drifted to sleep, the same phrase repeated over and over like a lullaby. I strained to hear the words, knowing somehow they were important, but they remained just beyond comprehension. I woke with tears on my cheeks and a pounding headache, the ghost of those unheard words lingering like smoke. The second day with Dr. Mercer took a different approach. Instead of detailed questioning, she had me close my eyes and guided me through visualization exercises, asking me to picture specific rooms in the home I'd shared with Thomas, to walk through our daily routines, to recall seemingly insignificant moments. Focus on the 2 weeks before he left, she instructed. Was there anything unusual about his behavior? New habits? Changes to his routine? I struggled to concentrate, the headache from morning still pulsing behind my eyes. He was working late a lot, said he was close to a breakthrough, and when he came home these nights, I frowned. An odd memory surfacing. He would make me tea, every night. Said it helped him unwind to watch me drink it. Dr. Mercer exchanged a significant glance with Alessio, who had been silently observing from the corner. This tea, was it a special blend? Some herbal thing, tasted bitter unless I added honey. He insisted it had health benefits. And while you drank it, the headache intensified as I pushed against a strange resistance in my memory. He would talk. Sometimes just about his day, but other times, I don't know. It gets fuzzy. Fuzzy how? Dr. Mercer pressed. Like listening underwater. His voice would get rhythmic, almost like he was reading something, but I can't remember the words. Another meaningful look between the doctor and Alessio. I think that's enough for today, Dr. Mercer said, making a note in her file. You're experiencing some resistance, which is normal when accessing repressed or subliminally encoded memories. We'll try a different approach tomorrow. As Antonio drove me back to the penthouse, I noticed we weren't taking the same route as before. Where are we going? I asked, suddenly alert. Mr. Russo arranged for you to see your daughter, as promised. Antonio replied, his tone neutral. We're making a detour to the park where Mrs. Abernathy takes her in the afternoons. My heart leaped. He's actually letting me see Lily. Antonio's eyes met mine briefly in the rearview mirror. Mr. Russo keeps his word. 20 minutes later, we pulled alongside a small neighborhood park where, sure enough, I spotted Lily's purple jacket as she played on the swings, Mrs. Abernathy watching from a nearby bench. 10 minutes, Antonio said as we parked. I'll be watching from here. I didn't wait for further instructions, practically running across the grass toward my daughter. Lily spotted me halfway there, her face lighting up with pure joy. Mommy! She launched herself off the swing and raced toward me. I knelt, catching her in my arms, breathing in the familiar scent of her hair, her skin, her little girl warmth. Oh, baby, I missed you so much. Are you done with your special job? She asked, pulling back to study my face. Not yet, sweetie, but soon. I smoothed her curls, noticing that her breathing seemed easier. No wheezing despite the exertion of running. How are you feeling? All better. Doctor. Martinez gave me special medicine, and the breathing monster went away. Tears pricked my eyes. That's wonderful, Lily. Mrs. Abernathy approached, smiling. She's like a different child, Sophia. So much energy now that she can breathe properly. And the apartment is so much more comfortable since they fixed the heating. I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. Everything Alessio had promised about Lily's care had been fulfilled, which only made our situation more complicated. My 10 minutes passed in a blur of hugs, and Lily's excited chatter about her new medications, and the toys that had mysteriously appeared in our apartment. Too soon, Antonio approached, discreetly signaling it was time to leave. Saying goodbye to Lily was agony. I held her tight, promising to return soon, trying to memorize every detail of her face. The nice man said you're helping people get better, like Dr. Martinez helped me, Lily said as I prepared to leave. Is that true? I froze. What nice man, Lily? The one with the dark eyes. He came with Dr. Martinez and gave me a teddy bear. He said you're very brave in helping people who are sick. Alessio had visited my daughter. The realization sent a conflicting wave of fear. And something else. Something I didn't want to examine too closely. Through me. Yes, I said finally, forcing a smile. That's what I'm trying to do. Back in the SUV, anger replaced my earlier joy. You didn't tell me Alessio visited my daughter. Antonio's expression remained impassive. Not my information to share. The rest of the drive passed in tense silence. When we arrived at the penthouse, I was surprised to find Alessio himself waiting, standing by the window, in what I was beginning to recognize as his habitual pose, surveying the city like a kingdom he controlled. You went to see my daughter, I said without preamble, without telling me. He turned, his expression unreadable. I wanted to ensure the medical care I arranged was adequate. You had no right. I had every right, he interrupted coolly. Your daughter's well-being is now my concern, just as yours is. Why? Why would a man like you care about a child you've never met? Something flickered in his dark eyes. A shadow of emotion quickly suppressed. I have my reasons. That's not good enough. Emboldened by anger and the lingering warmth of Lily's embrace, I stepped closer. If you want me to cooperate, to trust whatever this memory recovery process is, I need honesty. What's your interest in my daughter? Alessio was silent for a long moment, weighing something behind those impenetrable eyes. Finally, he moved to a sideboard and poured himself a drink. 15 years ago, he began, his voice low and controlled. My sister had a daughter with severe asthma. Similar to Lily's condition, the available treatments were inadequate. I invested heavily in research for better options, but the regulatory process was too slow. He took a measured sip of his drink. She died during a particularly severe attack. She was 4 years old. The simple statement, delivered without visible emotion, nevertheless carried a weight of grief that seemed to fill the room. I'm sorry, I said softly, my anger deflating. Your sympathy is unnecessary. It was a long time ago. He set down his glass. But it did teach me that official channels aren't always sufficient when children's lives are at stake. The research Thomas stole, it includes treatments for severe respiratory conditions, treatments that could help children like Lily. I studied his face, looking for deception, but finding only that carefully maintained control. So this is personal for you. Everything in my world is personal, Sophia. That's a lesson Thomas failed to appreciate when he betrayed my trust. Alessio moved toward me, stopping close enough that I could catch the subtle scent of his cologne. Rest well tonight. Tomorrow's session will be more intensive. That night's dream was more vivid than before. Thomas sitting beside our bed, speaking in that rhythmic, almost hypnotic cadence as I drifted between sleep and wakefulness. In the dream, I could almost make out the words, something about shadows and numbers, repeated over and over like an incantation. I woke gasping, my heart racing, the fragments of memory slipping away like water through cupped hands. But this time, something lingered, a sequence of numbers that made no sense yet felt significant. I stumbled to the bathroom, splashing cold water on my face, trying to hold on to the numbers before they faded. On impulse, I grabbed a notepad from the bedside table and scribbled them down. 41, 28, 07, 15, 93. Staring at the sequence, I felt a strange certainty. These weren't random dream numbers. They meant something. When Antonio arrived to escort me to the day's session, I was already dressed and waiting, the notepad clutched in my hand. The facility seemed quieter today. Fewer staff in the hallways as we made our way to Dr. Mercer's office. Alessio was already there, engaged in low conversation with the doctor. Both looked up as I entered, and I noticed immediately that something had changed. There was a new tension in the room, an urgency that hadn't been present before. "You look troubled," Alessio observed, studying my face with those penetrating eyes. Instead of answering, I held out the notepad. I dreamed about Thomas last night, about him speaking to me while I was half asleep. I remembered these numbers. Dr. Mercer took the pad, examining the sequence with professional interest. "This is excellent progress, Sophia. Your subconscious is beginning to release the encoded information." "What does it mean?" I asked. "That's what we need to determine." She gestured to a comfortable chair. "Today we're going to try something different, a mild sedative combined with guided memory retrieval. It will help lower the barriers your mind has constructed." I took an instinctive step back. "You want to drug me?" "No way." "It's perfectly safe," she assured me. "Similar to twilight sedation used in minor medical procedures. You'll remain conscious and able to respond, but more receptive to accessing buried memories." I said no. I looked to Alessio, expecting anger at my defiance, but his expression remained calm. "It's your choice, Sophia," he said quietly. "But consider this. The sooner we recover what Thomas hid, the sooner you return to Lily permanently, not just for supervised visits." The manipulation was transparent but effective. I thought of Lily's face yesterday, her improved breathing, her confusion about my absence. "Fine," I relented. "But I want your word that this won't harm me." "You have it." Alessio's voice carried absolute certainty. "Nothing in this facility will cause you permanent harm. That I promise." The sedative was administered via IV. For precise control of dosage, Dr. Mercer explained. The effect was subtle at first, a gentle loosening of tension, as if the edges of the world had softened slightly. "I want you to close your eyes." Dr. Mercer's voice came from somewhere nearby. "Think about those nights when Thomas would make you tea. Focus on his voice, the rhythm of his words." I drifted in the strange half-consciousness, memories surfacing more vividly than before. Thomas sitting beside me, his voice low and hypnotic, repeating phrases as my mind floated in that space between wakefulness and sleep. "Shadows never sleep," I heard myself say, the words bubbling up from some hidden place. "The guardian watches through the night." Dr. Mercer's voice came as if from a great distance. "Very good, Sophia. What else does Thomas say in these sessions?" "Numbers. He repeats numbers, and a location." My tongue felt thick, the words forming slowly. The old boathouse, where we spent our first anniversary." "What's at the boathouse, Sophia?" "A box, sealed in concrete under the North Pier. The numbers are the combination." Through my haze, I heard rapid movement, murmured conversation. Alessio's voice, sharp with command, issuing instructions in Italian. "That's enough for today, Dr. Mercer said, and I felt a new sensation in my IV. Clarity slowly returning as the sedative was counteracted. As the fog lifted, I became aware of Alessio on his phone, speaking rapidly in that fluid Italian that somehow conveyed urgency without raising his voice. He glanced at me, his dark eyes unreadable, then stepped outside, still issuing commands. What did I say? I asked Dr. Mercer, who was removing the IV with practiced efficiency. You've made a breakthrough, she replied, her professional demeanor firmly in place. Your subconscious recalled information Thomas apparently planted during those nighttime sessions. A location, an access code. Cold realization washed over me. Thomas used me. He... hypnotized me? Made me a carrier for his secrets without my knowledge or consent? Something like that, yes. Dr. Mercer's voice held a hint of sympathy. A form of subliminal suggestion administered while you were in a suggestible state. Likely aided by something in that tea he insisted you drink. I felt violated in a way I couldn't articulate. Anger building like a physical pressure. So he drugged me, programmed me like some computer, then abandoned me when he got what he wanted. It appears so. The door opened, and Alessio returned, his expression tightly controlled, but with an energy I hadn't seen before. The intensity of a predator closing in on its prey. We've located the boathouse, he said without preamble. My men are securing the area now. And Thomas? I asked, not sure what answer I wanted. No sign yet. But if what we're seeking is there, he won't be far. Alessio turned to Dr. Mercer. Is she cleared to travel? The doctor hesitated. The sedative's effects should be fully reversed within an hour. Physical movement shouldn't be an issue, but her emotional state... I'm fine, I interrupted, swinging my legs off the examination bed. And I'm coming with you. Alessio raised an eyebrow. That wasn't the plan. I don't care about your plan. Thomas used me, violated my mind, and betrayed my trust. If you're finding what he hid, I want to be there. I deserve that much. He studied me for a long moment, then gave a single, sharp nod. Get her something suitable to wear for a lakeside excursion, he instructed an aide. We leave in 30 minutes. An hour later, I found myself in a sleek helicopter, the Chicago skyline receding behind us as we flew north along the Lake Michigan shoreline. Alessio sat across from me, no longer in his immaculate suit, but in dark tactical clothing that somehow made him look even more dangerous. A weapon was visibly holstered at his side. No pretense now of being merely a businessman. The boathouse is part of a private lake resort in Wisconsin, he explained over the noise of the rotors. Closed for the season, minimal security. It's a good hiding place. Isolated, forgotten, but still accessible. How did Thomas know about it? He didn't. You did. Alessio's gaze was piercing. You mentioned it was where you spent your first anniversary. He leveraged your emotional connection to the place. Less likely to trigger suspicion if you ever consciously access the memory. The calculation of it made me feel sick. Had any part of my marriage been genuine, or had Thomas been using me from the beginning? As if reading my thoughts, Alessio leaned forward. Thomas Pierce wasn't his real name. We've confirmed he's Thomas Petrov, son of a Russian pharmaceutical executive with ties to various criminal enterprises. He's been running industrial espionage operations for years. The world seemed to tilt beneath me. I was married to a Russian spy? Not exactly. More of a high-level thief who sells to the highest bidder. The research he stole from us was just his latest acquisition. I stared out at the lake below, its surface dark and forbidding. Why are you telling me this now? Because you deserve to know who betrayed you. His tone held something I hadn't heard before. A hint of genuine respect. And because where we're going, there may be... complications. You think he'll be there. Alessio's expression hardened. If he's monitoring the location, our activity will have alerted him. That's why we're arriving with significant force. I glanced behind us, suddenly aware of the second helicopter following at a distance. What happens if you find him? That depends entirely on him. The cold finality in Alessio's voice left no doubt about what would happen if Tomas, resisted. We landed in a clearing near a cluster of upscale vacation homes, currently deserted in the off-season. Armed men fanned out immediately, securing the perimeter with practiced efficiency. Alessio stayed close beside me as we made our way down a winding path toward the lake, where an old wooden boathouse stood silhouetted against the darkening sky. The North Pier, I murmured, memories surfacing of Thomas and me, younger and supposedly in love, spending a romantic weekend in one of these lakeside retreats. Had he been planning even then, creating a hiding place for some future betrayal? Alessio's men had already secured the boathouse. powerful flashlights sweeping the weathered structure. The north pier was partially submerged, decades-old wood dark with moisture and age. There, I pointed to a section that looked newer than the rest, a patch of concrete perhaps 2 feet square, incongruous among the wooden planks. Alessio issued commands, and 2 men with equipment moved forward, setting up a small drill. The concrete, relatively fresh, yielded quickly to their efforts. Beneath it was a waterproof metal box with an electronic keypad. "The numbers," Alessio said, turning to me. I recited the sequence I'd written down. 41, 28, 07, 15, 93. One of the men entered the numbers, and the box emitted a soft click. Inside was a cluster of sealed vials containing a clear liquid, several flash drives, and a thick folder of documents. Alessio examined one of the vials, his expression intense. "This is it." "What exactly is it?" I asked. Before he could answer, a sharp crack echoed across the water, the unmistakable sound of a gunshot. One of Alessio's men dropped, and chaos erupted. I found myself shoved roughly behind a wooden pillar, Alessio's body shielding mine as he drew his weapon in one fluid motion. "Stay down," he ordered. His voice transformed into something harder, colder. More shots rang out from the trees surrounding the boathouse. Alessio's men returned fire, the exchange deafening in the enclosed space. Through a gap in the wooden slats, I caught a glimpse of movement, a figure darting between trees. With a shock that felt physical, I recognized the way he moved. Thomas. "That's him," I whispered, my voice barely audible over the gunfire. "That's Thomas." Alessio's eyes narrowed, tracking the movement I'd spotted. Without taking his gaze from the tree line, he pressed a radio at his shoulder and issued rapid commands in Italian. Immediately, several of his men began moving in a flanking pattern, circling toward the shooter's position. "Stay here," Alessio ordered, shifting his body to better shield me. "Whatever happens, don't move from this position." The intensity of his protection struck me even through the chaos. He was genuinely concerned for my safety, not just the information I might still possess. Another burst of gunfire erupted, closer this time. Through the fractured wooden slats of the boathouse, I glimpsed Thomas again, his face harder and colder than I remembered, a stranger wearing my husband's features. He was retreating systematically, firing with professional precision that confirmed everything Alessio had said about his true identity. "We need to move," Alessio said suddenly, his voice low and urgent. "He's trying to circle behind us." Before I could respond, the air was split by a deafening explosion. The far end of the boathouse erupted in flames, sending wooden debris flying across the water. Smoke filled the confined space, thick and disorienting. In the confusion, I felt Alessio's hand grip my arm, pulling me low and fast toward a side exit. We emerged into the gathering twilight, the cold lake air a shock after the smoke-filled interior. Alessio kept me pressed against him as we moved swiftly along the shoreline, using the gathering darkness and scattered trees as cover. "My men will handle the fire and pursue Thomas," he explained, his voice steady despite our pace. "Our priority is getting you to safety." "What about the research? The vials?" I gasped, struggling to keep up with his longer strides. "Secured. One of my men got the case out before the explosion." We reached a small dock where a sleek motorboat was moored. Alessio helped me aboard, then untied the lines with practiced efficiency. The engine rumbled to life, and we shot out into the darkness of the lake, water spraying around us as Alessio pushed the throttle forward. Looking back, I could see the boathouse fully engulfed in flames, silhouettes of armed men moving through the trees, flashlight beams cutting through the smoke and gathering darkness. "Did you know he would be there?" I shouted over the engine's roar. Alessio's eyes remained fixed on the water ahead, his hands steady on the wheel. It was a possibility I prepared for. Thomas is many things, but not careless. He would have monitored his hiding place. Was he trying to kill you? Or me? Both, most likely. His voice was grim. "You've become a liability to him now that you've led us to what he stole." The cold reality of that statement washed over me. The man I had loved, had built a life with, had just tried to kill me, rather than face the consequences of his betrayal. We traveled for perhaps 20 minutes before Alessio steered toward a small marina, where another black SUV waited. As we approached the dock, my eyes caught movement on the water behind us. Another boat, running without lights, cutting rapidly through our wake. "Alessio," I warned, pointing. He saw it immediately, his expression hardening. "Get down." I dropped to the floor of the boat as Alessio reached beneath the steering console and produced another weapon, larger than the handgun he carried. The pursuing boat drew closer, and in the faint illumination from the marina lights, I could make out Thomas at the helm. Gunfire erupted from the pursuing boat, bullets striking the water around us and pinging off the metal hull. Alessio returned fire in controlled bursts, never taking his other hand from the wheel, as he executed a series of sharp turns to make us a more difficult target. We were almost to the dock when a bullet found its mark, striking Alessio in the shoulder. He grunted in pain, but maintained control of the boat, bringing us alongside the dock with a controlled crash. His men were already there, returning fire to cover our exit. "Go," Alessio ordered through gritted teeth, helping me from the boat despite his injury. Blood darkened the fabric of his tactical gear, but his movements remained precise, controlled. As his men helped us into the waiting SUV, I caught a final glimpse of Thomas's boat retreating rapidly into the darkness of the lake, pursued by another vessel filled with Alessio's security team. "We need to get you to a hospital," I said, as the SUV pulled away, eyeing the blood now freely flowing from Alessio's wound. He shook his head. "No hospitals. Too public, too many questions." He pressed a cloth against his shoulder. "We have medical facilities at my estate outside the city." "Your estate? I thought we were going back to Chicago." "Too dangerous now. Thomas knows I've recovered the research. He'll be desperate, unpredictable." Alessio's eyes, despite the pain I knew he must be feeling, remained sharp and focused. "My estate has security measures Chicago can't match." As we drove through the night, Alessio received regular updates through his earpiece, occasionally issuing new commands in that fluid Italian that still carried authority despite his injury. I gathered that Thomas had evaded immediate capture, but was being actively pursued. "Why did he do it?" I asked finally, the question that had been burning inside me since I first learned of Thomas's betrayal. "Why steal from you, knowing what you could do to him?" Alessio was silent for a long moment. "Greed, primarily. The research he took represents billions in potential profit, treatments for conditions like your daughter's, but also applications that extend far beyond legitimate medicine. Military applications, performance enhancements, cognitive alterations, like what he did to me, the subliminal programming. A cruder version, yes, the full research includes much more sophisticated methods." His voice hardened. "In the wrong hands, it becomes a weapon rather than a treatment. And in your hands, is it a treatment or a weapon?" He met my eyes, unflinching. "Both, but used with discretion and purpose, not sold to the highest bidder regardless of their intentions." The drive took over an hour, moving through increasingly rural landscapes until we turned onto a private road guarded by an elaborate security gate. Beyond stretched a vast property, manicured grounds surrounding what could only be described as a modern fortress disguised as a luxury estate. Sleek architectural lines combined with discreetly visible security measures. Cameras, motion sensors, armed personnel. We pulled up to the main house where a medical team was already waiting. They whisked Alessio away immediately, leaving me in the care of a composed older woman who introduced herself as Mrs. Vega, the estate manager. "Mr. Russo asked that you be given every comfort," she explained, leading me through the stunning interior of the home. "You'll be staying in the East Wing guest suite until arrangements can be made for your permanent situation." "Permanent situation?" I echoed, too exhausted by the day's events to fully process her meaning. "That will be for Mr. Russo to discuss once he's treated." She showed me to a suite that made the Chicago penthouse look modest by comparison. "There are clothes in your size in the closet. The kitchen staff can prepare whatever you'd like. Security will be outside your door at all times." After she left, I sank onto the edge of the impossibly plush bed, the events of the past days crashing over me in waves. My marriage had been a lie. My husband had used me as an unwitting carrier for stolen research. I had been kidnapped, or rescued, depending on perspective, by a man whose power and influence were clearly even greater than I'd first understood. and now I was essentially a prisoner in his fortified estate, while he hunted down the man I had once loved. Sleep eventually claimed me, heavy and dreamless. I woke to sunlight streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows, revealing a breathtaking view of landscaped grounds extending to a distant lake. For a moment, disorientation claimed me before reality reasserted itself. A soft knock at the door preceded the entrance of Mrs. Vega, bearing a breakfast tray. "Mr. Russo would like to see you when you're ready," she informed me. "His physician has cleared him for visitors." "How is he?" I asked, surprised by my own concern. "The injury was clean, through and through, with no major arterial damage. He's recuperating well." Her tone suggested this wasn't the first bullet wound she'd seen her employer suffer. After eating and changing into fresh clothes, again perfectly my size and style, I followed Mrs. Vega through the sprawling mansion to what appeared to be Alessio's private quarters. Unlike the more formal areas of the house with their museum-like perfection, this space felt genuinely lived in. Books lined the walls, papers were spread across a massive desk, and family photographs, something I hadn't expected, adorned several surfaces. Alessio himself was seated in a leather chair by a fireplace, his injured arm in a sling, but otherwise looking remarkably composed for a man who'd been shot hours earlier. He rose as I entered, a gesture of courtesy that seemed at odds with our complex circumstances. "You look rested," he observed, gesturing for me to take the seat opposite his. I apologize for the abrupt change of location. "Is Lily safe?" It was my first and most urgent concern. "She's been moved to a secure property with Mrs. Abernathy. Additional security is in place, but in a way that won't frighten her." His voice softened slightly. "I've arranged for another visit as soon as my security team confirms no immediate threat exists." Relief washed through me. "Thank you." "There have been developments overnight you should know about," Alessio continued, his tone shifting to something more businesslike. "Thomas was tracked to a private airfield where he had a plane waiting. There was a confrontation." The deliberate pause told me everything. "Is he dead?" Alessio held my gaze steadily. "Yes." I waited for grief, for shock, for some emotional response to the death of the man I had once built a life with. Instead, I felt only a hollow emptiness, the final confirmation that the Thomas I had loved had never really existed. "What happens now?" I asked quietly. "The research has been recovered. Your unwitting role in this affair is concluded." Alessio shifted slightly, wincing as the movement jarred his injured shoulder. "Which leaves the question of your future." "And Lily's?" "Yes." His expression softened fractionally at the mention of my daughter. "I have a proposal for you, Sophia. One that acknowledges both your intelligence and your situation.